thank you to the Cheech and Chong NFT team for the lovely hat. And I don't know if you can see him right here, but we'll show up a picture on the screen. We've got some brand new Secondhand Talent merch available on our website, secondhandtalent.com. But enough of that. Let's get to our incredible guest for today's interview. We have with us Joe Marcinek, master guitarist, the ringleader of the Joe Marcinek Band, which is an ever-evolving, ever-changing cast of characters in a band. He's worked with artists such as Melvin Seals from Jerry Garcia Band, Jen Hartswick and Natalie Cressman from Trey Anastasio Band, Bernie Worrell from Parliament Funkadelic, George Porter Jr. of the Meters, my favorite pianist in the world, Holly Bowling, and many, many, many more. Joe is currently releasing his ninth studio album, One River Street, which is currently available for pre-order. You can find the link in the description and the comments. Uh, Joe, thank you so much for being on the show. It's so great to have you.
Yeah, I'd really appreciate you having me on. I know you don't do a lot of musicians or this side of it. So yeah, I feel very honored, man. Thank you.
Well, my pleasure. And I know that we've got, a lot to talk about in the vein of secondhand talent, but let's not think of it. We're into season 3 right now, and it's pretty wild because secondhand talent, when I invite guests on, they have episodes to reference. But I still enjoy asking this question at the beginning of every interview. Had you never heard the term secondhand talent before? What does that phrase mean to you?
I mean, to me, it's more if you have a passion or if you have a primary interest or motivation or goal or thing that you do, the secondhand talent is the peripherals of kind of what comes around that, and it could be other interests, but for me, it's more the necessary skills you have to learn to adjust and help develop your primary talent. So it's all the little things, as an independent musician, it's booking, it's emailing, it's promoting, it's management, it's finding flights, hotels, like all these other things that, when you first start out, you never even dream that, oh, I've got to be booking hotels in Austin, Texas in September. Like it's January. I don't want to be
Sure,
doing this right now.
sure.
But certain things that you learn, and I guess by necessity it becomes a talent. I don't think these are natural things, but yeah, just things that kind of come up like that.
Yeah, I mean, we refer to it on the show as talent that is not secondhand in its veracity and in its, requirement of different skill sets, but rather talent that is often overlooked in our industry. So all of those things that you just listed, management, I know you do merchandising and advertising on social media for the band and and promotion for the album. It's you. I see it on social media all the time. And like I said before, links in the description. But yeah, we refer to it as talent that's necessary but often overlooked. And this realm, in addition to including all of the things you just mentioned, includes our photographers, our bouncers, our bartenders, our front of house, our audio engineers, our stage managers. And I think it's really important to shine a light, in those areas, but specifically, in your case and why I wanted to bring you on the show is, given the way that you defined it, it really meshes with what our ethos is here on this program. And, before we get into all that technical stuff, I would love to hear, I'm sure our audience would love to hear a little bit more about your journey into music and kind of how you got to this point.
Yeah, so I guess I just got lucky. I didn't have any musicians in the family or anyone who kind of spurred me on initially. So I had a really good friend, Jeff Cunningham, in high school, who played guitar, and I was just always blown away that he could play, tunes on the radio, Sublime and Dave Matthews and different stuff. And so it's just, it was a big interest. And so he ended up, I'll never forget this, selling me my first acoustic guitar October 1st, 2000. Always remember I bought it for $100. This old Samick horrible acoustic guitar, but I loved it at the
Right
time.
on.
And yeah, that just kind of became the bliss. And I wanted to go to college, and I remember trying to think of what would I want to study, and the only passion I had at the time was music. So I just went in that direction. Went to Indiana State University down in Terre Haute, Indiana, and got a music business degree, and started following this passion. But I always loved. Remember, I went to the first Bonnaroo Festival, and almost every single band had someone sit in with them, and that really struck with me because it was something different. You weren't getting the pre-planned set. It was like, this was real, this is only going to happen one time.
Right.
And
It's
like,
raw.
yeah, you knew it was like real. So somewhere buried deep into my ethos or my core, that like this spur of the moment kind of thing is something I loved. So
Mm.
as I'm coming up, started playing with Fresh Hops, Northwest Indiana band that traveled regionally, the homies. And then
Shout out
at the
Steven.
yeah, exactly. And at the same time, my buddy Pete Koopman's a great drummer who lives in LA now, had moved back home. This is around 2010. So it was like doing these little side projects, but I was doing all the booking and writing all the music. So I was like, well, if I'm going to put all the work in, I'm going to just put it under my name, just something fun. It was always a side project, never meant to be anything serious. So it'd be like me and Pete, and then we'd just call other random musicians depending on who was
Mm.
available. Well, you know how that story goes. You start doing that a little more and more, and it
Yep.
becomes a love. And, then we expanded into Chicago and had all these great different players to choose from. And then it started traveling a little bit more. Then we started flying in guests. I think Steve Mollitz from Particle was like one of the first bigger guests we ever brought out.
Nice.
And then once that happened, it was like the whole lid came off of the possibilities. And I just started collaborating with like Hartswick and Allie Crawl, Joey Porter, Jason Han, and it really just exploded from there. So naturally, my time was being so consumed with that, I had to stop playing with Fresh Hops, and then just went full time into it, and it's really blossomed into something I never could have ever imagined playing with, like Bernie Worrell before he passed away, or this past year we got to work with Dennis Chambers, who's like one of the greatest drummers ever, and George Porter, who's my favorite. And I got to go to Melvin Seal's house, sit right next to him, and play my songs that I wrote.
It's
So it's
incredible.
like, yeah, stuff you can't even imagine. So
I
now just
mean,
kind of, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that must be such a satisfying feeling because I was around the scene when when Fresh Hops were playing back in 2010, late 2000s, and at the specific time, a lot of those musicians that you've mentioned were also musical heroes of mine. And I just think, and with Steve Mollitz, it's such a great start. He's such a wonderful musician in person. And just to hear like that kind of description of, and that got the ball rolling, and all of a sudden, here we are. And I love the concept of what you do. It reminds me a lot of a guest we had on last season, John Heinz from the Big Ol' Nasty Get Down. And what they do is they get a bunch of musicians together and they produce these, jams that turn into tracks, and they just jam in the studio and it's all these wonderful musicians. And I'm just so curious to hear that's in the studio. How does it feel playing with these people, live on stage?
It's indescribable. And a lot of it, when I was first starting out, yeah, I'm still learning at the time. I'm still learning now. So it's, at first you're just trying to hold on. Like, I'm like, so wish I could play with Bernie now, because I've learned
Mm.
so much. It's been almost 10 years since then. And I feel like I could communicate so much more. Where at the time you're trying to do your thing, but you're trying to learn and be in the moment. And so it gets to a point where you do feel confident that you belong on that stage. And it's just about expressing yourself. And one of the best things about these different lineups is everyone brings something different to the table. So once you're open to
Yes.
that, it doesn't matter if it's George Porter or the local guy at the open mic night. Everyone has something they can say. Now the difference is these bigger artists are so much more confident in what they say. And so that's the
Mm.
secret thing you learn, is to just be unapologetically you, like bring your thing to the table. That's your gift. You don't need to compare yourself to anyone else because you're never going to be anyone else.
That's a great piece of advice, I think, just for all of our listeners and viewers in general, is just to have that confidence in your craft and what you do. And I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure that confidence rubs off on you. And you gain a little bit from those experiences.
Oh, big time. Yeah, once you get a taste of it, you're like, this is where I want to live. I want to live in this mindset.
Yeah.
And it's truly a blessing and a gift, and I'm so lucky to have been able to experience it. But now that's my mission, is to, now that I've tasted that and felt that energy, is to bring it every night, everywhere I go, to everyone I interact with.
And outside of the live experience now, because I again, like I said before, I see the show listings all the time for all over the place, and it's always some crazy concoction of musicians. Um, and it's really cool to see because it's non-traditional, especially, we don't really have, Bonnaroo was a great example that you brought up. That's, kind of famous for sit-ins and those super jams. And, I think that's a really great example of, but to me, I feel like what you do in the live setting is kind of a microcosm of that.
Yeah, yeah, it was distilling those influences, and it's out there. You see it more and more common. Um, I guess it's so hard to keep a band together, and then if you want to travel, especially now with the way everything costs and just getting people's attention, to check out new music is such a battle. People just want to hear what they already know, and there's so many
Yep.
different options. So this is, in a weird way, become a hack that I never realized going into it. It's looking back, when I can go to, say, New Orleans and play with local players down there, that helps the gig, versus if you're a band from Iowa, no one's ever heard you in New Orleans. How are you supposed to build a fan base down there?
Yeah, absolutely. And with bands like, the Meters, you're down there and you're meshing with that scene down there, and you're really, I mean, that's such a great point. I mean, even, breakups notwithstanding, if you're a band from Des Moines, or if you're a band from uh you know Butte, Wyoming, then it's tough to kind of break out. I mean, and then regionally is even more difficult, because you talk about, you have the Southeast, you have the Midwest, even breaking out regionally, I feel like is a huge accomplishment, because there are bands that do tour prolifically but never get out of their pocket, in the US. And I think that's a great tactic, and of course hindsight is 2020 looking back. I'm sure it makes a lot more sense, but going through it, it's um a really cool way to describe it, having people in all these different places.
Yeah, and it takes a certain acceptance that not everything's going to be perfect.
Mm,
Especially,
hmm.
what I do is based off a lot of improvisation. I do have 9 records, so I've got a lot of original material, but not every show we're going to play all the original music. So it's having this kind of ebb and flow of, let's do a couple of year tunes, so it makes it a little easier, because obviously there's not much time to rehearse. So you have to be
Sure.
very trusting of going out there and failing, and just, things could easily fall apart. Now most of the time they don't, because you're working with professionals, but
Hmm.
a lot of people, when they're coming up, don't have that trust, and to just, all right, let's see what happens, let's go for it.
I can certainly relate to that as a stand-up comedian. You really have to go out there expecting that, it might not go great. And, if I like, I like to say, if my success to failure ratio as a stand-up comedian was translated to baseball statistics, I'd be permanently banned from the Hall of Fame. Um, but
Man, hang on. You
but
bring that up, and I got my book right here. I love stand up comedy, so I've been reading the new comedy Bible.
oh, right
I,
on. Hell yeah.
there, Judy Carter. There's so many parallels from, like, traveling and playing live improvisational music to stand up comedy. I'm just like fascinated by it. I love stand up, and just the whole culture behind it. I just like, I don't know, as
And
the musician brain, they kind of go together.
it really is, because whatever you say on stage, you have to say it with your chest. You have to have that confidence of, like, regardless if people are going to find this funny or not, I I find it funny. And I
Right.
need to trust that I am able to effectively communicate that humor. And a lot of times it doesn't work, but when it does, it's the best feeling in the world.
Yep, and music's exactly the same way. You get that one moment on stage where everything disappears and you're in the flow, and it's like,
Game
okay,
slows down.
now everything is reset. Today has been, it's all worth it. All the travel delays and sitting around and everything. You're like, just get me to the stage.
Oh yeah.
And it's funny. Maybe this might be a good a transition point. But I was just talking to someone about playing music, and it's like how that has now become the smallest part of my job. That like 90 minutes or 2 hours on stage playing guitar is that's all I want to do, but that's like the least amount of what I spend all my time and energy doing.
You did mention it's a great transition. Let's dive into that. So we mentioned at the beginning of the interview that you do undertake a lot of secondhand talent, insofar as merch, reaching out to people to help you out, in the spare cases where you can, but social media promotion. Um, Talk to us about, and let me just say, since starting this podcast, it's been roughly a year and almost a year now. Boy, have
Congrats.
I learned. Thank you, thank you. Boy, have I learned that lesson. It is, yeah, like, we have these filming sessions and we have some scheduling stuff and some events, but the real work is, mastering all the episodes, producing them all, getting them through social media. Talk to us about it. Like, I mean, how did it pick up and how did you slot into more roles in that aspect?
Yeah, so I guess once I started traveling more and kind of this Joe Marcinek project becoming the full-time thing, I was always, I did all the bookings for Fresh Shops back in the day. So I always used to do
Mm,
booking and
all
kind of
right.
quasi management. That's like a loose term, but kind of fills similar roles. So I was doing the booking and the management, and then around 20 end of 16 into 17, I started working with an agent and just realized it wasn't going to work because of this nature of the different players all the time. It's like they want to know who's available August 24th for a show in Orlando. And I'm like, I don't know who's available next week,
I was
you
gonna
know?
ask what could be some of the complications with that sort of arrangement because yeah, it's definitely trickier when, because an agent would want to know in advance, like so they could schedule out in case it's a simpatico artist.
Right. And it's easier to sell something when you have it in this nice, neat little package. But when
Yes.
it's a different band every weekend, it's like, well, how do we market this? And so
Oh,
I'm just like trying to grow. It's me. You're marketing me. It's my project. Eventually, that's the big goal. But obviously, we use these different players. So it didn't work out with the agent. And I also had a publicist at the time who I don't know if it wasn't the right time or I hadn't developed enough. So I was finding I was spending all this money on these other things to where I could see, a lot of it was just putting the money into social media and different advertising that way, and then keeping the rest for myself to be able to just do the things I was already doing. Um, so, so yeah, it was just learning what works and what doesn't. And a lot of times you never know what works until you find your audience. So going
yeah,
out there, playing the gigs, constantly talking to people, you just generally amass people that care about you. And there's no shortcut, there's no magic formula for doing the work. You have to go meet these people one on one, make the
absolutely.
connection. And then once you make the connection, a lot of times these people, they might start as fans, but they become friends and they're fans for
Hmm.
life. And so
Yeah,
you keep doing this, especially like it's hard. You don't want to put yourself out there too much, but you got to go out. You got to go work the merch table. You got to go talk to people. You got to make these connections. But once you do, it's like it opens up. That's like that's the book right there. It's just go and put in the work, and then you'll know this person you met in Iowa also has a friend in Oklahoma, and then they turn you on to someone in Texas, and it's like they'll do the
so
work for
true.
you.
It's so true. And so many of the guests that we've had on the program, it's a matter of I asked. And, a lot of the, a lot of the guests have been my friends, but I would say 50-50 are people that I've never, met in person before or had any real prior relationship with. But, having that, oomph to be like, hey, I believe in this project and I believe if I present it the right way, other people will be interested in it as well.
Yeah.
Again, it's like it's marketing me. It's not this
Yep.
whole thing where we're trying to like grab specific people in specific areas. Like we want everybody.
Hmm. And everyone wants to go viral, but the chances of that it's not happening. So it's one by one. You start with your friends, and then the circle or the snowball just keeps growing and growing. And someone compared it to like it's waiting in line at Disney World. You just got to keep waiting in line, but the longer you do, you're going to get closer to it. And most people get out of the line, so that's why they never get there. But if you can keep doing it over 10, 20 years, you're going to amass a giant following and friends and fans from all over the place.
In season one, we had on Caleb Williamson, and he a wonderful guy, and he brought up something that he called the 5 year mark. Um, I'm paraphrasing, but the point of his idea is that, it's 5 years that you're doing something before you even begin to really comprehend what it is that you're doing.
Oh yeah.
And, it's really, you know, like I said before about, the majority of stand-up shows, not necessarily panning out the way I wanted to. It's just one of those things that comes with the territory.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it's like a muscle. You gotta train it. And the
Oh,
more
oh
you do it,
yes.
the more confident you are. And yeah, now I like to go out without a set list and just go up and you feel the room and it's like that's your instincts, trust your instincts. You know what to do. When you're in the mode, you'll feel the energy and do we need to start hot? Do we need to start a little slower? Like you can't plan those things out. You have to feel that atmosphere in the room.
And taking that time to read the room and mingle with your fans is invaluable. It's one of the most, so we have our Facebook fan group is Third Hand Talent because that's what we
Nice.
call the fans because it's true. Without the fans, who do we have? And without, all the wonderful people who support us, some become great friends over time, some become friends, some become wonderful acquaintances, some become people we work with. But it's those relationships that develop, over the course of, 5, 10, 20 years that really, I'd say accomplishes two things. It shows the veracity of your career as, or your prowess as an artist, but it also really shows your character as a person. That if you're able to cultivate and maintain these relationships to the point of, where you're on the level of, being good friends with people, that were just acquaintances at one point, that's a really special thing.
Yeah, and putting it out there into the universe, like the universe is going to answer. There's this great book called The Artist Way about dealing with blocked creativity and just how, you know, sometimes all it takes is like, okay, this is what I'm looking for. And then the next day you get a call from your friend and somehow there's an answer to that problem. So you just open to the universe to receive it and it shows up in ways you would never imagine.
Absolutely. I would love to talk about merch and, that aspect of it, but I really do want to talk about, the way you've gone from album 1 to 9 and like what you've learned along the process, because I think that's really interesting, having, like you having produced a lot of the records, some lessons learned, because a lot of people don't realize what it takes to put a record together from start to finish, from writing the track to producing the record. And I feel like that would be some really cool insight.
Yeah, so each one kind of takes on its own personality, and especially with me having these different lineups, I don't, yeah, it's like I've never had a set band, to write for. So like currently right now, like I said, I finished my ninth record. So now I'm kind of in the open air for number 10 of like, what's it going to be? What's it going to sound like? Who am I going to work with? Where am I going to record it? There's so many little things that, sometimes it helps if I know for my third record, it was going to be an organ trio, which is just guitar, organ, and drums. So
Mm.
that kind of narrows the focus of, okay, I want the songs to sound like this, or they're naturally gonna sound like this. So you don't have to worry about writing for vocals or horns or strings or these
Sure.
bigger arrangements. That kind of like helps you focus. But then other times, like I'd say for the fourth record, that was the pandemic era. So I had a lot of time to just lay around, and I was just writing songs to write songs because there was nothing else to do,
Yeah.
which I absolutely loved. It was like the biggest blessing of the pandemic was just finally having time to just be able to write music, because normally we're on the go so much. By the time you get home, it takes a day to recover, and then you're like, okay, now I'm feeling creative, and then you got to leave again.
Yep.
um, so yeah, that batch of tunes was all over the map. They didn't all the songs sounded different. So that was like a different approach from going from the organ trio thing. And then, after that, I had this grand Dead Funk Summit idea of bringing George and Melvin together. So that naturally, those songs had a certain sound. I wasn't trying to write like Grateful Dead music or Meters music, but it's naturally going to come out that way when you work
Yeah.
with those two.
Yeah.
Um,
Like you said before, those confident musicians are gonna, they're gonna play it with their chest, so to speak.
yeah. Oh, and naturally, if George is on a record, it's going to sound like George. He can't play
Yeah.
like anyone else.
Mhm.
So yeah, I would say like finding it. It always starts and ends with the songs. You have the batch of songs, and then it's how do you want to bring them to life. Um, and sometimes you're lucky to know who you're writing for, or other times you don't, and that kind of adds to the character. Um, one of the things I learned now is just that albums cost so much money. Just from recording and just on the musician side to then getting the artwork to getting it physically produced. And then you have the whole other marketing side, which can almost cost more than what it costs to record the album. Um, so it's a big undertaking. Okay, I want to do an album. Well, now I know there's a giant debt storm, if you will, looming, that
Mm.
you got to figure out how to do it. And now with Spotify, and that's the way most people listen to music, no one's buying albums.
Yeah.
So you're like, well, how am I going to afford this? Is it just all going to come out of my pocket? Do I save some from every gig? And with the cost of living now, that's even harder. So um, it works both ways though, because you can also record at home, and everyone has a computer. And if you have, a little DI box or something, you can do it. But it's hard once you've done a high quality record to then say, okay, my next album's going to be recorded at home and sound like this. Then if you listen to them back to back, you're like, these don't jive. I got to stay up here. I can't then come back down here. Um, one of the most important things I learned though is whatever musician or talent you're working with is to trust them, that they're going to know, the right part either for the song or for the album. So when I did this One River Street record, I got to work with Alan Evans, the drummer from Soul Live, but he's also a great mixer, an engineer, and a producer. And I had these demos of the songs, loosely recorded on GarageBand with like, drum loops or something. But I was like, just bring your thing to the table. Don't obviously have to listen to any of my loops or anything. Like, I want you to do you. And
Yeah.
he would just like, what if we tried the bridge this way? Or what if we slowed it down a little bit? Or, what if we added some claps here? And just every idea he had just made the song so much more vivid and full fully fully encompassed. And so it's like trusting these people, not being
I was
like, no,
gonna
that
say, having that level of trust is
yeah,
huge.
because if you come into it like these are my ideas, you have to play it exactly how I want to do it, you're missing out on all these beautiful opportunities to make it better. And sometimes, your idea might be here, but then it might become something totally different. And if you're not open to that, you're going to miss out on all those little things. So that can work with collaborating with all aspects, not just the music side of it, but say you're going into it with an artist for the cover art or the artwork, and you might have a certain idea of how it goes, but they're looking at it from an artist perspective. So you have to trust that, or a visual artist perspective, you know? So you could say, hey, I want to, like a tree that's growing out of the concrete. And then the Breeze, who did my JM4 cover art, came up with this thing that I could never have imagined.
And I'll say it again because it's worth, it's worth restating, having that, trust in others during the creative process of something that's, I mean, this, for all intents and purposes, your baby. I mean, these albums, these
Mm-hmm.
projects, everything we produce as artists is deeply meaningful to us. And being at the point where you're able to have that trust in other people when they get involved in this project to that level, I think is, I mean, I think it's another testament to, how you've grown as an artist over the years.
Yeah, and one of the things with that, is having the credibility, or the what's the word for it? Just like I always, it was huge for me when I was starting out and it was growing, to like always keep my word. So whatever you're going to do, if you tell someone you're going to do it, you have to, your word is your bond, because that's the
Yes.
base level of trust. But if you continue doing that, you're going to gain the trust of so many more people, and they're going to respect you and have that same level of trust. So if you say, I'm going to pay you, or I'm going to do whatever it is, you got to do it. And I've had countless shows where I lost money and had to pay out of pocket all the time. I had to pawn all my gear at one point just to keep the ship floating. But you earn that level of respect, and through doing that, you'll develop certain relationships because people can trust you. So you can
And
work with higher quality artists because they know that trust level is there.
absolutely.
That's
When
the
I
best.
hear you talk about, your growth over the last 20 years, um, it really gives me this wonderful sense of, I'm glad that I'm trusting myself. I'm glad that I'm moving forward with this project. It gives me a renewed confidence in what I'm doing, having conversations like this, and it just matters so much.
I mean, that's what it's about, because you'll be caught in the trenches and you don't really get to see the bigger picture. And it's easy to get discouraged. I do it all the time, but every once in a while you get those connections and glimpses that are like, okay, I am on the right track. I think we are doing the right thing here.
And every time I have a conversation like this, I feel like I say this with every guest, it just really, um, it really validates this sense of platforming the sides of the music industry that the casual fan may not know about, and really trying to help them understand that, it's cool to go to a concert and enjoy it, but let appreciate and recognize that, you know, a
Oh
lot of
yeah,
work goes into this final product. Um,
so
and
much.
and saying thanks and having the nice conversation, buying a little piece of merch, a lighter or a koozie, it just goes such a long way. And it's such a great way to show appreciation for artists that you care about or had a good time at their show.
Oh yeah, and I think most people want to support, they just don't maybe think of it until you can bring it up for them. Like, and half the time buying the shirt or the CD or something, you're supporting the
Or the
graphic
pin.
artist. You're supporting not just the band, all the ecosystem of around. It takes
Exactly.
this village to keep it going, and yeah, everyone just thinks, okay, it's a big rock star on stage, like it's all glamour and lights, but like you said, there's so much, hard work and blood and sweat that go into it that no one ever sees.
And that's like I said, that's the wonderful thing about this platform is that we get to highlight, those friends of ours who work so hard to to keep making sure that the show goes on. As I like to say, we shine the spotlight on the people who shine the spotlights.
Man, I
Um,
know you said timeout, but I feel like you could even leave this part
we're
in.
leaving this in, no edits right here. This was a beautiful conversation.
Yeah.
I really feel that uh it's it's an honor for me to because I've been doing stand up for 18 years now. And
Damn, that's
I
crazy.
I started in 2006 performing at places like Kinetic Playground and Hobby Pop and
Oh yeah. All
uh
the old haunts.
Jim Bucas actually is was responsible for me getting into the door for the first time at the Abbey at the Green Room.
He Wow. Yeah, that was the one on the side where the restaurant was. Yep.
Exactly. That's Wednesday nights. It was
Hmm.
it was an open mic in the Green Room, and it was Paradise Waits in
Yep.
it was
Wow.
Grateful Dead nights. And I used to show up, and John would never let me in. And Lucas came outside one time, and I was just sitting down, and he was like, "What are you doing here?" I was like, "Man, I just want to go into the green room and tell some jokes. I'm here every
Yeah.
Wednesday. Like, I just want to tell some jokes and listen to some Grateful Dead tunes." He goes, "You're my new guitar tech." I was
Ah,
like,
so he
I was
got you
like,
in that way.
I don't play. He goes, "It doesn't matter."
Yeah,
And
exactly.
he introduced me to John Armatrano and to Awesome and all those people and to all the old shoe guys
Yeah.
um and then in the late 2000s, early 2010s, I worked with the Coop.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But for a project like this to work, it's similar to yours, where like I have to be able to be ready to interview someone, you know, on a dime or when the opportunity comes up. There was a case when I interviewed the Cheech and Chong guys. Um, that was a 2 day. I was a 48 hours to air for a two-parter. Um,
Wow.
and I pulled it off, but like on completely on my own. Like we're about to hit 150,000 views,
Damn.
1.5 thousand hours of watch time, and over 500 subscribers on our YouTube page
That's killing,
since our
man.
first episode on April 5th.
Yeah, you're cooking.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, oh yeah, we were on fish.net. We interviewed Ellis Goddard,
Oh,
the executive director of Mockingbird Foundation.
shit. I gotta go check these out. So, are you on like? Can I find it on
Spotify,
Apple
Google,
Podcasts?
Apple,
Okay,
literally like Good Pods, Deezer, literally anywhere podcast.
because that's what I
And then
normally. I'll just like download something before a flight, and then that way I can just listen to it, and not have to
and they're
worry about anything.
really digestible lengths too. Like there's some episodes that because I had to cut stuff are really short. There's a few episodes that range up to like 40, 45 minutes. Um, but the guest is in every title, so there's no mystery there. And
Yeah.
it's we've had everyone on from photographers to front of house to like we had Earth Radio's front of house guy on.
Wow.
Um, like I said, the Goose photographers, John Hines from Big Old Nasty Get Down. Like we've had a healthy chunk of people. So the way season three is going to play out, episode one is going to be with. I know I had the same reaction.
Holy
We're gonna
shit.
slot. Uh, we'll probably slot you in for episode two, just because I want you to be able to start pulling for your album.
Appreciate
Um,
that, man. Thank you.
and I saw the I still have to order a copy. I saw the GoFundMe's up there. But I want to be able to put that up while it's still active. So I want to get this episode in as close to the beginning of season three as possible, and then the rest of your company for March is going to be Sean Bayous, um,
Oh, no
who
shit.
is an incredible surrealist artist. Let's check this out. He did a poster for Pearl Jam.
Oh, damn.
Guess how he got the gig?
From from Pearl Jam? Yeah, no, I would have no
So
idea.
And he was just like, yeah, fuck yeah, let's fucking go. And so for the Hamilton, Ontario show, he did that print.
No shit.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. So
Unbelievable.
we've got him in March, and then
I bet he'd be a great interview.
if you want to, I mean, we're secondhandtalent at gmail.com. If you want to put us together on an email, that would be awesome. Or Facebook chat, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, like I said, we're taking no exclusions. And then for April, we've got all four of the Coop guys.
Oh,
So
nice.
that's why I asked them. I was like, guys, for the 1 year
Coop,
anniversary of the podcast, that's how I want to
coupon.
celebrate. So it's
That's
good. So
killer.
Jake Barinholtz, Kaysen, Danny
Yep.
Biggins, and Joe Ray.
Oh
And
yeah.
then in May, we've got my wife who designed our logo. Um, we've got a couple of live painters, Garrett Melby and Rising Tide Studios. Um, and I believe my buddy Mello, who's a talent manager and producer here in Chicago, and that takes us through the end of May. We're hoping to
Yeah.
stretch this season out for, you know, 30 episodes or so.
Oh,
So
okay. Yeah,
yeah, the
that's
first
great,
two
man.
seasons we did April 5th to July 26th, which was 19 episodes. We
And you
did
just do
that,
one a week?
yep, every Wednesday. And then we put out like, supplemental social media content. And then I partnered up with there's this YouTube channel called Ween Archived. And what
Oh,
he does is he takes all the Ween like B-sides and cassettes and like unmastered shit recordings and turns them into gorgeous music.
oh shit.
So there's so many Ween songs that I've discovered that I've never heard,
Never heard.
and like versions of like demos and things like that. So I do reaction videos to those as well because I love Ween, and then and it's for me it's really truly a lot of hearing that for the first time. And
Yeah.
and I've always
Wow. That's.
wanted to do reaction videos, and it's a nice way to keep content up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Keep churning it out, man. Well, shit. I really, yeah, really appreciate everything, brother.
I appreciate this so much. I know it was really quick, but that was a wonderful conversation, and I'm looking forward to hearing it again.
Man, thank you. Let's do it again.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. This was wonderful. Joe, it was such a pleasure having you on the show. We definitely need to do this again as we go on. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode of Secondhand Talent. I am the Steiner, and we will see you next Wednesday.
Truly appreciate you, man.
All
Thanks so
right.
much for what you do and all of this. This is huge.
Listen, the feelings are mutual.